Okay, we have a quorum. And first, we had a amended agenda. We need to make a motion to approve that you added the items. Are we good with that?
I think you can move to take notice of the update. And then get a second, and a voice vote is fine.
Okay. So I make a motion that we approve the update, which was basically the finding of fact from the water department. That was added into the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. And then I just want to confirm that all the notices were done appropriately.
Yes, they were.
All right. And then also remind the commissioners, if you've had any ex parte communications or any conflicts of interest with any of the agenda items, please let us know at the time of that item. All right. The first item is to review and approve the May 6th meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those? Any questions, thoughts, concerns? No?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 6th. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the May 6th meeting minutes. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion is approved. All right, and we'll go, we have a preliminary plan review. We have a pre-application for 501 Cross Road. We have Matt Sanchi here or somebody for the Roman Catholic Fiat Diocese? Nobody here? Matt, if you're on the phone or online and you're muted, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself.
We can check in at the end to see if he arrives or check
Okay.
in with him next month.
Yeah, we'll see. He's the player. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any questions or concerns or any items you would pull out to discuss individually on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'm open for a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, we have second, a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, good. All right, on old business, we have CB 2310, but that is going to be continued because they didn't receive anything. So we're continuing that to the July 1st or 2nd.
2310, the CUP short-term rental.
So that'll be July 1.
July 1. And that was continued as an open
I need to move to continue the public hearing.
and all right, I make a motion that we continue the public hearing and move this item to the July. That's, I'm sorry, 2nd or July 1st. That's right, July 1st meeting.
Second.
We have motion second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, we go on to subdivision 2501 to be determined Woolly and Hearthstone Court. The James and Gillian Hill.
Come up to the left.
Yeah, if you can come up to the podium and just your name and address and just kind of explain what your plan was. I want to turn down.
Okay, good afternoon, commissioners, call state professionals, citizens of McCall. My name is Richard Hill. I'm here representing myself and my wife. We live at 66 North Morningside Way, Boise. We have lived in the US since 2009 and are US citizens. We've lived in Boise for over the past decade and are regular visitors to McCall in all seasons. Today I'm going to talk about Spring Mountain Ranch Block 8. And before I get into that, I'd like to introduce Greg, who we've engaged from Crestline Engineers and who can help us with any technical questions this afternoon. So the proposal is to split Spring Mountain Ranch Block 8 into 5 lots. It really is I think, a wonderful site. It borders Woolly, Chipshot, and Hearthstone Court. It's got great location, central to downtown, great natural features, great wildlife. But I think we have to acknowledge that it's a somewhat challenging site due to the limited access, the area of wetlands, and the natural topography. Meredith, were you able to share like maybe the site plan? And I suspect that's why it's not been commercially developed up until this point. It's got some challenges, this site. Our intent is to actually build our family home here, and to help fund that by selling off a couple of these plots. So you can see it's a long strip of land, and we have plots going from west to east, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our approach in this development has been twofold. One, we really love the site. We want to keep as much of the natural features as possible. And second, we're trying to access this somewhat challenging site in the safest way. One of the main issues is Chipshot Drive is a private road, and we've been in contact with the Timberlost HOA, and they have been quite clear in their decision, or position rather, to not entertain any access from Chipshot. So we're limited our access points from Woolly and Hearthstone Court. We do have an egress from Hearthstone Court onto lot 5. And then lots 3 and 4, we propose to access from that inside bend there in Woolly. Great sight lines from that spot. We're trying to reduce the number of access points on Woolly because it's a relatively busier street. Sites 1 and 2 are where the challenge are in terms of access. We're proposing to access that from the end of the site, from where Chipshot and Woolly meet. And we believe that this is the best compromise between safety and maintaining the natural aspects of the site. The challenge is if we took access from Hearthstone Court and essentially made another road along that site, this thing's only like 150, just over 150 feet tall. When you have the setbacks for a road, you're basically just going to have 3 parallel roads. And you're going to have to fell a bunch of trees and do a bunch of level and cut. So you can see here at the extreme west, you can see the easement on site 1 to put a driveway in to access site 2. So to conclude, we believe that this proposal is the best compromise, as I say, between safety, between keeping the natural features and developing the land. And I'll leave it here.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Although I just realized I forgot this is a public hearing. I forgot to open the public hearing on the site. So I'll make a motion. We open the public hearing and include all the previous comments from the applicant.
Second.
Right, motion second, all approved?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carried. Okay, now, any other questions for the applicant?
Your shared easement access on lot 3, that's just a stub of a driveway?
Correct. For lots 3 and 4, yeah. So lot 4 would be accessed from.
Well, it must have been canceled.
It's a pretty steep hill right there, isn't it?
There's a flat piece and then it goes up. If we go to I think there'd be one of the plots has got the contour lines. Yeah, here. So you can see at that point there's a flattest section and then it goes up. But if you look at the average grade, it meets the 10% requirement if you put a driveway kind of contouring around that line. And then up into what would be lot 3.
And then that's all wetlands basically on lot 5, right?
The wetlands area is designated there. So the building site for lot 5 would be north of the utility easement. I don't think there's any really usable land south of the utility easement.
Makes your 2 acres very small.
Yeah, the actual usable piece of the 2-acre plot is quite small. As I say, it's a somewhat challenging site.
So then there's, in that access to the west, that's, is going to be a turn off Woolly or off Chip Shop?
Yes, it's depends what your definition of chip shot and Willie is. The private piece of chip shot is, as you can see, designated by the straight line. So from that perspective, it wouldn't be off Willie. It wouldn't be off chip shot because it's south of that straight line. It's on the public land, the public right way.
Right away.
But I don't know if I would really call it off Willie either. Sort of in between. I don't know, Greg, have you got a comment there?
Chip shot. Go to another figure there. Shows the electronic.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, any other questions for the applicant before we go to staff report? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Meredith?
Okay. So Mr. Hill did a good job reviewing somewhat the history of this property. I did have the Hills do a fairly elaborate deep dive on the Spring Mountain Ranch master plan, because it is not often that we have a random remainder block of a subdivision that doesn't have a plan allocated to it. But from everything that was reviewed by both the applicants and myself, as well as the Jacobs Consulting planner, Nina Schaefer, there is no official requirement on block 8 as it relates to Spring Mountain Ranch or any obligation within any development agreement or other agreement relating to Spring Mountain Ranch that requires anything other than maybe a new home for the entry feature of Spring Mountain Ranch somewhere on these 5 parcels as part of this. There was one early drawing of an extension of Hearthstone to accommodate more duplexes across this site. But from what we can tell, that got left out or let go of somewhere in the early 2000s and late 90s during Spring Mountain Ranch, probably due to the big pile of rocks and big giant wetland on the site. So this is one that is not designated as common area, open space, or any other required undisturbable space in the Spring Mountain Ranch subdivision. As much as we would like in the community to keep really special and complex open spaces that we have left like this, unless someone makes an effort to buy it, put a conservation easement on it, or funding falls out of the sky to buy it and turn it into a city park. We do have an obligation to process subdivision plat applications based on the rules that are adopted. That being said, Mr. Tankersley and the Hills have invested heavily in getting the topography and information relating to the what's underground in there, and they do have a pretty firm understanding that this is not going to be cheap or simple. I think that I was kind of hard on them as they approached this, just knowing that there's going to be some rocks to pull up in the construction process, and with such a small number of lots, it's a passion project to say the least. So it is located there along Woolly as you approach Spring Mountain Ranch. This is going to be a bit of a complex and busy area transportation infrastructure wise, because of all of those intersections that occur right along Woolly, Chipshot, Denali, Clements, and what will be a more complicated Clements plus Divot here later in the summer. But the obligation of the city is to ensure that any lot that's created and can meet the dimensional standards adopted by the city of McCall has an access to a public roadway. So the locations identified as the shared accesses for lots 1 and 2, as well as the shared access point for lots 3 and 4, are the best that can be found on that property. And the difference being if this were developed to the base zoning density and you had duplexes, apartments, townhomes, you could get up to 20 in there based on the zoning. It's probably a better case scenario that we only have 1 or 2 cars coming out, or 3 or 4 if there's short-term rentals involved on these private driveways than any number of high counts per day coming out of a neighborhood in this location. Again, in an ideal world, this would probably not be the best use of this site, but it is the right of private property development. I'll leave some of the more complex engineering notes to Morgan. As far as the current zoning, it is zoned R4. So as I mentioned, you could get up to, in theory, 20 units on the site, but it would be very, very difficult to do so. As well as receiving some indication from the sewer district that going up to the base zoning would not be likely or possible or pencil in this case scenario. So only, I believe, 5 hookups are available for the parcel as a whole. That's generally a larger acreage for the zone that it's located within. So we'll be seeing some 1 acre hilltop ranchettes or something similar as opposed to small neighborhood sized lots. But you can always have a bigger lot than you're supposed to have. As far as neighborhood meeting and noticing, everything was conducted on time and according to the standards outlined in code. A thorough application was sent in. We have a maximum density proposed of 1 dwelling unit per acre, where we could have up to 4 per code. The minimum property size is about 0.8 acres, whereas the minimum within the zone required is 1/4 of an acre. And then the minimum street frontage of any lot is 167 feet. It is the preferred method in this case that there be those shared driveways, because having 4 driveways figured out on that part of Woolley would probably be a safety concern. So getting down to just the 2 on Woolley and 1 through Hearthstone is a better mechanism for dealing with the site. There are not enough lots proposed in this to trigger a parks requirement or parks in lieu fee. So there is no process in here or requirement that those be dedicated within this application. If and when we do have a parks impact fee, at the time of pulling a building permit, it would be the hope that we're able to collect some revenues to contribute to the park system in addition to the fire impact fees that are in place. But for the time being, we only have the open space and yard requirements within code. Then other than that, there are existing easements on the property related to utilities, wetlands, drainage, snow storage, etc. The right of way, but all of those are included on the plat as submitted and not suggested to be messed with. So that makes my job a little bit easier. What else? Other than that, there will be some pathway construction, I believe. Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere along Woolley in the next couple of years. I don't remember if we've received the funding for that or if we're waiting on the funding for that. There's a lot of those balls in the air. And then this site was identified during the original housing strategy in the last comp plan as a hypothetical site for local housing. But given that the city did not purchase it through the land banking program and that it is quite a challenging topographic and geologic site, it probably would not be a great one for limited income housing. I think with that, I can stand for any questions. We tested out a new compliance table or discussion table for you in this staff report for once we get to those deliberative criteria that I torture you with each time, and hopefully make it a less torturesome process, but I'm sure it will still not be our favorite. And then you have Morgan, our city engineer, available for her report, and any questions you need answered, we can either find the answer or take more time to get it, or whatever you need, and I'll stand for any questions.
You mentioned a snow easement, is that just the 12 feet along chip shop?
Yep.
And is the road still gonna come in from Harvestville?
Yes,
To lot
one of the
5?
stubs to lot 5 will be through
Okay.
Hearthstone.
There wouldn't be any pathways proposed along this property because they already have the one along with the boardwalk. So it'd be
Correct.
farther down Woolly towards town.
Correct.
Commissioners,
Ooh, sorry, there was one thing that I received and hadn't sent out to you. So I got it down at the bottom of my inbox. McCall Fire District did provide a comment that I'll read off to you, discussing that there's a hydrant in place at Chip Shot and Parr intersection. Prior to final plat, a wildfire protection plan should be prepared and any fuels mitigation recommendations should be instituted. So if there's any understory clearance or any invasive or dead trees out there, they should be pulled down prior to application for final plat. The final plan shall be submitted with the final wildfire protection plan shall be submitted with the plat application. Any plan mitigation work must be completed or financially guaranteed prior to recordation of a final plat, and a schedule for the phase completion of mitigation work may be approved in conjunction with recordation of final plats. And then verification of completed mitigation actions will be the responsibility of McCall Fire Protection District. So if we wanted to address that within the conditions of approval, we would just add one that says comply with the comments stated by the McCall Fire District. That is all.
all right, commissioners, any other questions for
Um,
Meredith?
You have use restrictions, so no short-term rentals?
Within the application, and Jill is online and can speak to this in greater detail, there was mention of mitigating either the size of short-term rentals if they were in there, or some degree of the short-term rentals within the CCNRs that come at the time of the final plat application. That would be an above and beyond contribution because we don't have a baseline short-term rental prohibition within code in the subdivision process, but they have stated limitations on probably the size of the buildings that would then somehow limit probably the size and scope of those short-term rentals. That's something,
Yeah.
it's not,
But short-term rental of 10 puts
Yeah.
5 more cars in each of those.
Yep.
Okay.
Commissioners, any other questions for Meredith? All right, we'll go to engineering, Morgan.
Commissioners. Sorry, I'm more soft-spoken. So I have reviewed this application. Meredith touched on a few items such as access without being able to get HOA approval for access onto Chip Shot Drive. We have to provide access to this parcel. So Woolley is the option. And where they have located the proposed shared access easements seem to be the best that is available, and sharing those access points makes it more ideal since Woolley is a collector level roadway. And that would be consistent with our access management guidelines. I did ask for more information regarding the shared access to lots 1 and 2, evaluating site distances, and what that driveway will look like to get to lot 2 from lot 1, trying to avoid like pavement next to pavement or gravel next to pavement on Woolley, to make sure that there's some kind of barrier there so it's not as confusing or concerning with snow removal efforts, and just driving in general. Let's see, and then I had just some few questions about, are they proposing to stub utility services in the lot with this project, or are they just going to have that be on the ownership of whoever develops the properties? And then I just have some comments in there regarding the subdivision itself, such as tying into the McCall control point network system and including just additional labels such as Chip Shot Drive is private. They're pretty minor comments. Meredith mentioned the project on Woolley. We did receive a grant award notification for building out and reconstructing some of Woolley where the boardwalk doesn't exist to make the pedestrian connection from the boardwalk to Davis, so to fix the gap in that pedestrian network system, but we're still waiting to hear about the project funding. The state, I think, is waiting to hear about their funding from the federal government before they finalize and send out grant awards. So we have been awarded it, but we don't have the funds. So that's a work in progress on my other hat of my job. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Would that extension be on the north or the south side of Woolley?
Our initial concept is to continue it on the south side. So it would be a continuous pathway all along Woolley, all the way from Spring Mountain to 55, basically, downtown.
Any other questions for Morgan? Okay. This is a public hearing, so we'll open up for public comment. Is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? If you're on the phone and muted, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Anybody online or on the phone to comment on this application? Is there anybody here in the audience that wishes to comment regarding this application? Oh, got you first over there. Go ahead, sir. Yeah, you can go up there, just name and address, please.
Paul Christensen, resident 1395 Divot Lane. I come off of Divot onto Woolley with my bicycle and my grandkids and my car multiple times through the day. Divot comes into Woolley. I have to look both ways because Woolley has become a major thoroughfare in McCall over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm looking across at the Woolley Boardwalk that comes in at Divot. To the left is Chip Shot. So within 100 yards, there is the Woolley Boardwalk with a crosswalk marked, people coming on that continuously, coming down Woolley, looking up at that curve, looking at traffic, and then additional coming into this new subdivision, which they'll be coming into Chip Shot, making a turn up into the subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 4. What do we have? 5 activities going on in that area. It's going to be a dangerous intersection with that many in that small of an area. And you have to walk by there, as I just rode my bike down through there looking at that. It's crazy, I'm saying, is as far as safety factor. Now, the other access on Woolley is that curve right there, and where the train comes down, so they're going to put that road in there. You cannot see left to right cars coming either direction. So they're going to be coming in that direction also. So I don't know whether the police department or the roads, or has anybody gone out there and taken a look at that. But oh boy, it's going to be a challenge. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. My name is Greg Allen. I live at 1358 Parr Lane. We've been in the neighborhood since 2008. And I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to walk this site. It's a beautiful site full of trees, rocks, the topography, the slopes. It's amazing. And it's disappointing for me to see that, okay, this is going to be developed, because when we turn off of Woolley and turn on to Chip Shot and then go down Parr Lane where we live, it's just a whole nother world. It's quiet. The nature of it preserves the trees, the rocks, the views. And I just hate to see that get lost. And I don't know how you're going to be able to put enough teeth in some development agreement that you're going to preserve everything that the existing neighborhood is used to. It is a nice, beautiful buffer that protects our neighborhood. I realize, you know, everybody's got their rights, but I always wonder what are the existing neighbors? What are our rights? So anyway, that's just my comment. It is a beautiful site. If you have the opportunity to ever go out there and look at it, please do. Thank you.
All right, anybody else in the audience that wish to comment regarding this application? Hey, once again, is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? All right, commissioners, any other, well, with that, we'll close the public comment. Any questions for staff, commissioners, before we close the public hearing?
Hearthstone Court, is that a private drive
Mhm.
as well? And that's part of the same subdivision with chip shot? Or?
It's not chip shot.
No, that's a timber. That's a timber loss, is one of those phases, so it's a whole separate, it's all part of Spring Mountain Ranch. Hearthstone is part of Spring Mountain Ranch, so this is just one of the properties that never got fully developed. So that's why they can come through off that, I'm pretty sure, because it's part of the association.
Yep, and the stub from Hearthstone to this one would have been a code requirement back at the time of that original development, where every block has to be interconnected, even via their private streets. So,
So is that an option for this development at all, or?
if they tried to access more than, I believe it is, Morgan, is it 2 or 3 lots using any given driveway? It triggers the creation of a full publicly dedicated street. That has to be, not 60 feet in width of pavement, but a right of way of 60 feet in width with drainage swells on both sides. And that would very likely be physically impossible or very difficult to do that and then find a way to punch it. Or to put a cul-de-sac or any configuration on that. I think we spent a while trying to figure out if any of those would be a better fit, but that would probably eliminate a lot more of the natural features and trees on site and push everything to the edges. So the driveway scenarios is probably the best to preserve setbacks and the edges of each of those parcels.
Do you know if the city forester has walked the site with the applicant at all?
He has not yet, as there are no building footprints proposed, and they won't be doing any road construction. So typically we don't require a tree survey in small surveys like this. It's just a tier above a record of survey. You as the commission could ask for that to see a significant tree survey added to the application package, either at a subsequent meeting if you wanted to see it or prior to city council if you wanted. Another thing that comes to mind is wanting to see building envelopes prior to city council or before the next meeting so that you can determine, are those significant trees outside of the building envelopes? Can those be placed more specifically outside of the nice tree stands? That's a question you have the authority to ask.
Morgan, I believe that is probably the lowest point in the property, but it is still very steep. Are you gonna be able to get is it gonna go in 12 feet and then go straight up?
I have not seen a driveway proposed for these lots, but when they do submit, that is something we look at during the building permit process, that it's a code compliant driveway. That they have their 5-foot landing that's 6% or less adjacent to right of ways. And then a maximum of 10% for that driveway slope.
You got an answer for that, don't you? Not yet? Okay.
Worried about it.
Not too worried about it as in you'll be able to bulldoze most of it or it's natural?
If you'd like to come up, you could actually respond to the, some of the comments as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Greg Tankersley, Crestline Engineers, 323 Dinehard Lane, Suite C in McCall. So to answer that particular question about the driveway slopes, we strategically picked the locations that are shown, one, based upon existing easements and ideal spots for site distance and things like that, as well as maximizing on using some of the natural terrain features in the area. So if we look at the topography for the shared driveway that's associated with 3 and 4, there is kind of a saddle there that can be navigated. So 4 can kind of peel off into that. And then lot 3 can kind of run up that saddle. And you can see in the topography where it's flatter there. If you run kind of up that right side of lot 3 and then kind of swoop in a little bit, you can see those flatter contour lines there. Whereas if you go out to like the point of 1 and 2 where it connects with Woolly, there's 5 to 6 feet of grade change right there. So having a driveway at that point is not really feasible and would require much more grading impacts and things like that to make that happen. So does that answer?
Yeah, and then it looks like there's 15 to 25 foot of elevation change from Woolly over to Chip Shot.
And driveway 1, the 1-2 driveway that's kind of at the corner there, there's kind of a natural route to follow that somewhat parallels Woolly. However, there's the intent is, as Richard mentioned, is to try to preserve as many of the natural trees and features as possible, as well as, narrow driveways if that makes sense. And with the topography change, as well as the ability to preserve some of the natural vegetation in between that driveway and the existing road, we feel like there'll be adequate separation for, just making it's granted, there will be 2 kind of roads that parallel each other, but it will be elevated in a sense that it won't be as noticeable as if it was at the same elevation.
If I can add.
But I'm guessing most of those trees will be gone, right?
No, I don't believe so. So I walked in this
Richard,
morning.
can you come up to the
Sorry.
I walked it just before this meeting, and there is a natural bait point. If we go in on the left-hand side here, excuse me. Yeah, you're not going to quite get it. But if you come in from where Greg is proposed to have the access point, maybe I can actually, do you mind if I just come up here? Yeah, so in here, there would be a couple of trees that have to be taken down at this point here, but there are significant trees along this edge so that we could have a bank of trees between Woolly and the driveway. And then along this piece here, there's actually a beautiful natural path without any trees, already all the way along here and up here. So there's a small section of trees that we need to be removed here, but I believe that we can keep a bank of trees separating Woolly and the driveway. And our intent is to keep plots 1 and 2. So, like, I have what's the skin in the game? Use an American term. Yeah, so just to kind of capitalize on some of the comments that were made, there was discussion about tree stands and preservations. I think the applicant has expressed the desire to preserve as many of the natural features as possible on the site. Not necessarily maybe establishing a building envelope at this time, but also probably maybe making some different rules or different things that could be followed that would help them to preserve those features, as well as maybe even defining where some of the driveways might be in more detail. There was a discussion about the property being developed, and that was, it's kind of a bummer that there will now be homes there. Spring Mountain Ranch is a PUD that's been around for quite some time, and this property was always intended to be developed. So it's not anything new that will be created by this project. There were some discussions about sight distance on Woolly. Sight distance to the right is roughly about 280 feet and to the left is about 240 feet. So if you're approaching Woolly from your driveway there, you would need to be able to see about that distance in the direction. And you can see if we look at the preliminary plat and the dimensions on there, there's more than adequate distance for that. Where the sight distance gets a little bit iffy is where Morgan has kind of mentioned it in her comments, is when we take a look at where we're approaching at onto lot 1, right? And so in order to maximize that 240 feet to the left, it doesn't really exist there, right? If we're tying in perpendicular to chip shot. So it's kind of limited in that area, but there's definitely plenty of sight distance to the right down chip shot. So that's, as was mentioned, the preferred location for this to minimize additional access or longer driveways or more tree removal and things like that. By utilizing this location, it best suits the site. There's a discussion about utilities are mentioned in Morgan's report, and the intent of the property is to establish both water and sewer services into the property, as well as any franchise utilities that would be required for power, phone, different things like that. And those utilities, the water and sewer, that becomes a factor when we're looking at a final plat. We're trying to sell the lots, and then the health department would need to release the sanitary restrictions. And so those utilities pretty much have to be in place before that can be recorded. So it's pretty much a requirement of developing the property. And I think that's, some discussion of the wetland and the lot sizes. Lot 5 is roughly 2 acres. I would say that the area that would be north of that easement is probably maybe a half an acre, third to half an acre, which is almost 2 times the size of, a lot if we're looking at 4 units to the acre. So I think there's ample area there for a home site. So does anybody have any additional questions for me?
Trying to understand the access, how that interfaces. If you're making a left out of lot 1, does that tie in perpendicular? It seems like it kind of noodles in there between chip shot and Woolly.
That's the picture right there. So that's
Says
to the left.
Lenora is not correct on that.
No.
paper.
Yeah, so it kind of ties in probably to the left of that larger tree there and the monument sign. So yeah, probably about where that cursor is. It would be tying in perpendicular to the curve of chip shot there, but still inside the city right of way, because it's kind of it's a weird shape there. It's not the standard 60 feet as it runs down Woolly. So there's a little bit of opportunity to utilize that space while not providing access onto chip shot drive where it's restricted.
So it is chip shot, but not where it's restricted.
Correct.
Is it ready for public comment and input?
I'm
No,
sorry, we're done with that. At this point. Any other questions from the commissioners for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's any other questions for staff before we close to deliberations. All right, I make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. One thing I've seen over the years, this property has had other initial ideas and concepts with a lot higher density. So I do like the fact that this is probably about as low as you're going to see on this compared to some other past potential ones that were going to have 15 to 20 units and stuff on there, trying to utilize that density. It is unique property with the rock. I mean, I drive by it all the time. I'm very familiar with it, but I think what they have laid out is probably the least impactful use that could potentially go there. I mean, it will change some, but I mean, I think pretty much where the building starts, they're gonna be is that that's their only choices, really.
I don't live in the neighborhood, but I walk it a lot, and I think the topography, especially, they're either gonna have to bulldoze a lot of this, or the houses are gonna be perched up pretty high above Woolly. And there's a lot of rock in there. But that, so I guess I'm concerned how much they'll be able to save of the natural topography. But my bigger concern is that driveway on Woolly. People don't go the speed limit down there. Those are my two comments.
Liz, any thoughts?
I share what everybody has said already. Chairman, I agree with you that I think this is probably the best case scenario for this particular piece of land, considering what the original intent was and what could possibly be there. I also share the concern of the driveway chip shot Woolly situation. I think there's a lot of risk there. I think in terms of, pedestrian and biking, people north of that area could maybe, use the crosswalks that are actually on Spring Mountain to loop around to the pathway. So there is mitigation. It just requires kind of looping around, perhaps in a different direction from what your, intent is. But all said and done, I think they're compliant with the code, and it could be a lot worse.
Tom, your thoughts?
Just having a hard time wrapping my head around how the entries function, Just kind of seems like, you say more density, but more density, in a townhome type scenario or something like that. I know that's not what's presented, but it seems like something like that would be where you can push access to more units into more of a central location. Something like that seems to make more sense to me. I get you, you're trying to make do with what is there, and there's some pretty interesting constraints here, not the least of which is chip shop drive. Without that access to these, now you're kind of ratchet these lots into, or access to these lots off the wall. So that's kind of my thought. I'm still trying to absorb, what this is and kind of how it works. So I don't know if I have a really hard and fast opinion. Just those thoughts about, what a different density might look like. You may be able to maintain a single family lot in there for what the owner is trying to accomplish, but maybe create revenues some other way. It's just my thoughts.
Okay. Well, Meredith, maybe we'll go down the vision requirement items. I should say first, any other questions for staff before we go down that items? With your new table here? Thinking that the whole time you're in
The new
vacation.
torture.
Prefer you don't just read whatever the staff comment is and have your own organic thoughts. But for commission action on a preliminary plat, You must determine whether the proposed plat is consistent with the applicable general and specific plans as specified in Title III of the Code for Zoning or Title IX of the Code for Subdivision and the comprehensive plan. Does this commission believe that the plat is consistent? Why or why not?
I believe it is consistent with the zoning, especially as planned as, single residences. So it's less than the density than is allowed for in the zone. Looking at the comprehensive plan, this was always intended to be zoned for residential use, so I think it's compliant there.
Got the next one yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we agree with that one.
Number two, the design or improvement of the proposed subdivision must be consistent with the applicable general and specific plans adopted by the community. That would be the pathways master plan, the parks and recreation and open space master plan, the transportation master plan, etc.
But the size of it, it doesn't apply to a couple of them.
Right.
And say that.
I don't think there's anything that is not consistent with code or plans.
Number three is the site must be physically suitable for the type of the development. So your type of development is single family residential.
I think it's probably more suitable for that than the higher density that it's zoned for. And be less impact on the surrounding roads. I think it is suitable.
So number four.
Yep.
Okay, the design of the subdivision or proposed improvements must not be likely to cause substantial environmental damage or substantially and avoidably injure wildlife or their habitat. Their harm to the environment or habitat proposed.
You consider habitat where the town deer spend the winter days on the hillside?
I do not have a comment from Idaho Fish and Game. I Rolodex.
I guess I'm gonna struggle with this one, because I think they're gonna have to clear a lot of land. Again, what's substantial environmental damage? There's no description or dictionary definition of that, right?
There isn't, but I do still think with the smaller, with individual structures compared to some of the condos that were,
Well-
homes that were there.
And I guess to Meredith's point about let's put a condition on, let's see footprints. Is that, what did you call it?
You could request building envelopes.
Building envelopes?
Yeah.
Uh,
With that, it would be compliant. Knowing, because I mean, they're still gonna have to go with based on city code and the size of the trees and what you can and cannot cut down.
Correct.
You know, so within certain building footprints. You're
So
gonna be able
that
to.
would be a forestry evaluation and building footprint.
It would be nice to see a concept of, just some blocks on there and what kind of trees would or wouldn't be there. I do kind of think with the wetland area that's there and that the area that's across the street with Woolley, that the continued wetland through there, it seems like, at least from a wildlife perspective, they've got a place to go. Trees are a different thing and stormwater. Engineering.
And they like the golf course better anyway. Nice fresh air. Yeah, I think with that, so, okay, I think with those items, which
I
will
would
come up
be
later, that
comfortable adding those items, yes.
And would you like to see them yourselves, or would you like them to be deferred to city council?
This has to come back to us anyway.
The findings would, but if you feel that you're not ready to make a decision on that point until you see more evidence, then you can request more information.
Uh, What do you guys? what's your opinion? You want to see envelopes as well?
I'd like to see it.
So there's two of us anyway.
Yeah, I'm fine with the council, but
Yeah.
also fine with seeing.
Yeah, I think some of the comments of council lately are they want us to do this job and make recommendations to them, so. I would like to see that.
Shall we keep going through to see if we have more to do? Okay.
Yes, just in case we don't want to come back again next week.
Okay, so the design of the subdivision should not be likely to cause serious public health problems.
Yeah, I don't see no problem.
Public health problem.
Yeah, is traffic and traffic patterns a serious public health problem? I'm not sure. I think with our ask to go back for, proposed or potential building envelopes, I think adding in stronger visualizations of the driveway easements will help inform us.
There's 6. Says the design of the subdivision or type of improvement must not conflict with easements acquired by the public at large for access through or use of the property within the proposed subdivision. In this connection, the city may approve the plat if it finds that alternate easements for access or for use will be provided, and that these will be substantially equivalent to ones previously acquired for the public. The subsection shall apply only to easements of record or to easements established by the judgment of a court of competent jurisdiction, and no authority is hereby granted to a legislative body to determine that the public at large has acquired easements for access through or use of the property within the proposed subdivision. This would be related to that utility easement.
The utility and snow storage are the only two.
Yep.
So they're not changing them.
It doesn't, yeah, there's no conflicts of any easements.
Says the proposed subdivision must be in compliance with all other ordinances or law of the city and or county.
Appears to be in not violating any other laws or ordinances.
For 8, the proposed subdivision must be in compliance with, oh, did I already read that?
Did you have that one too?
On a duplicate. And then let's see, that covers all of them. So your next step would be to, if you wish to continue and make that list of to-dos, you'd need to reopen the public hearing, state what evidence you would like to see and what meeting you'd like to continue it to see that for.
All right,
Motion to reopen the public hearing.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to reopen the hearing. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, now,
So
Special.
I think we have 3. Liz, you wanted to add a condition about driveway mapping?
Yeah, a better visualization or I'd like to just understand the impacts more of the driveway easements as planned. I think we also talked about proposed building envelopes, and then perhaps a tree survey.
Right.
And what meeting should we move it to?
Miss Meredith. Sorry, I'll let you catch up.
do they have the time? Would you be, yeah, see what works for the applicant too?
I think you could continue to July 1, but I don't have a ton of optimism that Kurt will be available for a tree consultation with within the next 2 weeks. But if we need to go again to August because there's not enough time, we can continue at that point. So either get materials by the 17th for continuation to the 1st, or this commission can continue directly to August 5th if you wish.
Say let's try for the first. And
First, I think,
if they
yeah,
can get everything in, give them an opportunity to get it done as quick as they can.
so I move to continue SUB 2501 to the July 1st meeting to allow time for staff and the applicant to provide more information on the following. Building envelopes and driveway cladding, driveway routing,
Driveway
and a
information.
tree survey.
And we keep the public hearing open.
We opened,
We-
we reopened it.
If it, no, it'd be,
Oh,
continue
and we
with the-
keep, and we continue the public hearing.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right.
May I ask for clarity there? So the information that three items, you need that by the 17th of June? Yeah. And then we'll have a follow-up hearing on July 1st. July 1st, yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
Great. Okay, moving on to the next item, we have design review 2509 and shoreline 2507. Is a public hearing. I make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have Lisa here for Repcos?
Maybe connect.
You, I think your easiest way will be to join the meeting on your laptop and then screen share via Teams. Every time I try to use the dongle, something bad happens.
Yeah, muted. Joining. I just share. I'll let you.
Stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
And then your face camera is on if you want 2 angles.
Okay. Hi, commissioners, staff. I'm Lisa Beck, representing Epicos Land Planning and Architecture. Am I muted?
Yeah, it's green. You're good.
Okay, good. Representing Epicos Land Planning and Architecture, and we are located at 303 Colorado Street in McCall. I'm here on behalf of GC LLC, the owners of 1600 Lake Street. This application should be pretty easy. It's a very minimal application. I'm here because of design review and shoreline environment zone. It is on an existing residence. That is a very lovely residence to work on, and I'm honored to be able to be working on it. This is a legacy home, and we're doing some minimal renovations to the exterior of it just because it has new owners and we're personalizing it. We'll walk through some of the existing conditions of it for lot coverage and what we're doing on the exterior, where mostly it is bringing the house where it is located is
in a non-conforming location. So it predates the 50-foot shoreline environment zone. And so that's triggering a few things of why I'm here today. The house renovation, I generally refer to these as doing surgery to a home. So it's very delicate what we're doing to this one. So I'll zoom in right here. So this is the existing condition. Can you guys see it fairly clearly? Of it, where it's a lovely home. It has the maintenance to it has fallen by the wayside a little bit, and so we're doing a refresh on it where the same colors, we're not changing anything regarding the style of the home, colors or anything like that. But one of the largest items right here that we all notice is this big stone wall. It's not very pedestrian scaled to this. And so we're going to make some modifications to that. And then we're proposing to add a shed dormer in between these two here. And that is in the conforming portion of the house. Here. Okay. We'll go through 3D, but just so you guys know, the majority of the home is upland of the 50-foot shoreline zone. There's a portion of the stone patio, the exterior stairs that we were just looking at, that stone wall, and then a portion of the home here. There is some exterior improvements that are lakeside of the home also too, related to some patios and stairways. We are planning on keeping things as close to the existing condition, except just for repair, maintenance, and things like that. We're just cleaning up the conditions of it. I don't just want to go to the fun stuff. This is little lag. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it's. I don't know if it's through Teams or what. Okay. So this is the 3D model that represents the home. We're not doing any changes to really the front of the home that changes any massing to it. We're contemplating changing one of these grills to a slightly different material, but that's it. The home stays intact. And then right here is where we want to concentrate. I'll note a few locations to keep in mind. So this is the existing condition. This is that large stone wall that's right here that we want to mitigate. And then in here is where you'll see a dormer. And then if Wi-Fi works well, I'm going to change this into the proposed condition. And you'll look at those two areas. So in general, while this is thinking, we're in agreement with the staff report, and we're in agreement with the letter that Morgan has provided to us. And then I have some updated information for you regarding that. Actually, I do agree with the upsizing requirement for it too. And so I just dialed in a few plumbing requirements for that as well. Okay, there we go. Perfect timing for that segue. So with this, we wanted to remove the bulky mass of that front wall. And so we're reducing some of that non-conforming square footage that's there. To be able to take advantage of letting a little more light into the space and breaking down that big stone wall. It's right there. And then here you can see the new dormer with this. So, and that really is the bulk of the addition and any changes to this. The only slight modification that I've updated the packets with, and like a little over a week ago or something, is just adding in this barbecue grill area up there. And the numbers that are in your packets for the calculations that staff provided you are current. So the only difference is just some minor modifications related to that barbecue area. So the only changes to the elevations are just toward the lakeside of this also too. And then as far as landscaping goes, it truly is a refresh. We're turning some locations from impermeable to a stepping stone and more pervious improvements there. We were conservative in our calculations where we counted every stone step. So you can see them in here as impervious. And so we just wanted to do like a very careful job on our calculations. So we weren't careful not to bend any rules. This too. So really it's a very nice improvement, I think, to the home.
Was there open space behind that wall before?
So it's unused. It was just unused space behind that wall. And so all it was an upper patio with stairs down and a basement with no, it was just a wall there. And the only light into the basement was through this location where that was a door at the end of a hallway. So it was just not utilized as well. So I think it really helps the exterior elevation, the scale of the home, and access. You want to see it the before, or are you good?
Is this the house that the teepee sat on?
No,
No?
this is Jack and Susie Marshall. Did you know them? Jack and Susie Marshall's home.
Know it from the Lakeview Resort.
It's close to town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? Okay. thank
Okay.
you.
Do you want me to leave this up?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Unless Meredith, do you have anything you're gonna be taking over and show up? I guess so.
Oh, no.
Do you want me to share?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can remain for questions.
Also real quick, I think I see Matt Sanchi online. You want to mention something about we'll listen to his free app so he knows what we're doing.
Yeah, Matt, when this item is done, we'll go back to your pre-app now that you're here. Staff report time. Okay, so as Ms. Beck stated, this is a design review and shoreline review application to take a surgical approach on a very much existing single-family residence that was constructed prior to the adoption of the 50-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark of the lake and other named water bodies. So from a non-conforming development standpoint, the rules are you can mess with, expand, or change an existing non-conforming structure such as this one time and one time only, not to exceed an expansion of greater than, I believe, 25%. And that's what you get if it's attached to that non-conforming object. So in this case, adding on that dormer space and increasing the volume there up on the second floor, or technically third floor, comprises that expansion, one time and one time only. If in the future they wanted to touch the garage, they're still limited by the lot coverage overage on the property. So there would need to be some other shuffling and shaking in order to find future ways to change anything structural, or that has a roof that comprises what counts as lot coverage. So within that, it's really touching approximately 540 square feet of existing building volume, and then that small dormer addition on like a roof area that already exists, to make it actually a comfortable space to perhaps sit and read a book rather than look out while you go to the bathroom or the likes of that. So it's a really creative and strange experience to look at this building where we're filling in a void in volume of building that already existed. I don't really see this happening very often because I don't think that we have a lot of houses that were constructed in this way, especially with this interesting retaining wall dungeon that we hope not to find anything spooky behind. So with that, I think that Lisa did a really good job reviewing how they counted the transition from any given cement that's got some weeds growing through it, or cemented grouting between pavers, and turning that into a more pervious pathway structure. So that's reducing the coverage as they fix and maintain it, only by inches or a couple square feet at this point, but any reduction in concrete or coverage down in the shoreline area is a happy city planner. Other than that, when we look at the dimensional standards, you'll see in your staff report on page 3 that there's a lot of colors in the proposed category, which indicates that those are just the nonconformities that are not proposed to be changed. I colored lot coverage quite red because it's quite a bit over lot coverage, but again, we're not adding any more. We are still reducing, but we are a good solid 5% over what the desired state would be, unless or until we decide that you have to revert back to whatever the lot coverage limit is in the development process, which has not been done and would probably not go super well if we tried that. Again, either staying within the existing state or reducing your coverage is the preferred method when we go about this process. We don't create any building height problems with the addition of that dormer. We do not encroach farther into the shoreline setback that is below what it should be. And that added barbecue area doesn't change lot coverage because it's already under an eave area, so it's a non-starter. With that, I can stand for any questions. But you'll be reviewing the design review criteria and shoreline, for which I did not give you a magic table.
All right, commissioners, any questions for Meredith?
Are they all natural plantings down by the water? There's no
Yes.
lawn.
Well, there's the existing lawns that'll be rehabilitated, but not fertilized, and they'll be seeded with native grasses. And I will applaud Epicos for bringing the applicants along. Initially, they had been hoping for a completely different lower area that was more conducive to perhaps football and beaching and any given thing, but they did a really good job of expressing how special this type of water frontage is, and the importance of stewarding it well. So it's always appreciated when we see effort on native plants and planting appropriate species.
Any other questions for Meredith before we go? Morgan. Right, Morgan. Yeah.
Hello, commissioners. I don't have too many comments on this application. I do need to see an update to the erosion control measures provided and the stormwater materials. The ones provided don't seem to capture all the work happening closer to the lake, which that's easy. It's landscaping, so like a straw wattle or something just to capture excess sediment. Easy change to make. And then I put together, since this is on city water, we look at water fixtures and sizing of the water meters when projects come through the building permit process or the land use process to see if the meter currently there provides enough flow and pressure to the house as stated that it needs in the building code. So I had a few questions about that Lisa has given me an update to before I can finalize that for this project. And right now it does show that a larger meter size would be warranted to support this house. And that'll just be done through construction and final approvals. And water fee connection fees will all get sent to the applicant during my final approval of the project. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Any Commissioners, any questions for Maury? Okay, we will open up the public comment regarding this item. Is there anybody on the phone or online that wishes to comment regarding this application? Again, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself if you're muted. Is there anybody here in the audience that wishes to comment regarding this application? Okay. With that, I guess there's no rebuttal. Don't anything you don't need to add anything. Okay. Yeah, I know exactly. All right, Commissioners, any questions before we close the public hearing on this item? Questions for staff or anything? All right, I make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? All right,
Aye.
all right. Yes, with that, all right, we want to do the
Criteria.
the criteria of the plan review and the shoreline.
So the commission shall determine the following before granting approval. Criteria A, is the project in general conformance with the comprehensive plan and what?
I would say it is because it's staying the same use, and it is compliant with the comprehensive plan in terms of zoning and the fact that it's residential.
Criteria B, does the project jeopardize health, safety, or welfare of the public?
Don't see any issues.
B, does the project conform to the applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance as enumerated in section 3.16 of the chapter in any way whatsoever?
Even though it's non-conforming, it's still class, it's still.
And it's reducing a tiny bit of the non-conforming couple items or the little bit
Less permeable. More permeable. Okay.
E, the project must have no substantial impact on adjacent properties or on the community at large.
believe there's any that.
Seems okay.
E, if applicable, a subdivision design review document has been reviewed and approved by the commission in lieu of design guidelines.
Not applicable.
Good job. For projects in the shoreline and river environment zone, the project must not have an unreasonable or adverse impact on the visual quality of its setting or the water quality. With asterisks to the shoreline standards.
Yeah.
Okay, and then F is applicable to scenic route provisions.
In the scenic route.
Okay, our specific shoreline standards are that number 1A, development should not dominate the vistas of water to the extent that it has an unreasonable adverse impact on the visual quality of its setting. So if you are the house looking at the lake or the street looking at the lake,
Doesn't change anything.
Well, a window in the garage. No, it's fine.
B, development should be compatible in form, line, color, and texture with its surroundings.
I haven't heard of any color changes.
E, development should not significantly differ in scale or contrast to its surroundings to the extent that it has an unreasonable adverse impact on the visual quality of its setting.
It is not changing its scale.
And D, structures should be clustered to allow for visibility through the site of the lake or river and avoid a wall of structures as viewed from the water.
Not changing any of the.
Opens it up more. Yeah.
And then the other provisions in shoreline are just related to any impact to water quality, any necessary permits that aren't applicable in this situation, and then things that are covered by stormwater review in the office of the city engineer. So if you have any concerns about that, speak now or forever hold your peace.
No concerns with that.
And over to you, Chairman.
All right. Commissioners, any other questions, thoughts, concerns? I mean, I think this seems pretty clear and cut and dry. Your staff will finish the last little bits that Morgan needs and everything, but I don't see anything that would cause any issues. With that, I'm open to a motion.
I move to approve DR 2509 and SH 2507. Staff recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, now we're gonna jump back a little bit because we had an applicant that wasn't here when we first started. We have the pre-application 501 Cross Road. Matt Sanchi, I think I saw you. There you are.
Yes, commissioners and staff, thank you for making the time for us today for the project.
Yeah, if you'd like to let us know what you got planned, Matt.
Yes, absolutely. I can actually share my screen here so I can show you a little bit of the project and let you see what we're thinking. This is the Our Lady of the Lake Catholic Church at 501 Cross Road, just across from the new St. Luke's expansion. This is our proposed revised site. Let me move you to the more existing condition here. So on the existing site, we have the existing worship facility, an aging out multi-purpose building that was, I think, originally put up as a temporary means, but it's at the end of life, and the existing A-frame residence that's underused at this point. Both the A-frame and the temporary structure, parish hall, residence, multi-use building will be being removed. The desire of the group is to expand the church for more parishioners. As McCall has grown, they've seen a growth in their congregation, but also better functionality when they do have people. What we've proposed here is an expansion to the west to encourage a more traditional cruciform structure. The unique nature of the site in McCall has allowed that this upper portion of the site has a 12-foot, 13-foot differential from upper to lower. And in that, what we were able to do is to keep the site reduced from more building space. We've stacked the project in that in creating two levels, a lower level here, which would be mainly functioning as multipurpose space and a parish hall. The existing footprint of the church being here, which most of the lower space is currently interstitial space, mechanical, with the front space they use as a small gathering space, but it's very low ceilinged, cramped. So we would be utilizing that more for mechanical and storage and then expanding those functionalities to the west as discussed. Entry on the lower level facing the north side of the lot. The upper would be designed to then expand the congregation space, the worship area, moving it west, bringing back in things that are not currently available in the existing space, including confessionals, staff office spaces, common conference room, and a multi-purpose space, including things like a cry room, a central corridor. The one thing we want to do with this project, and that is very important to the father and the diocese, is to keep the church inherent in McCall, but also inherent with its existing look and effect, which is very much in that mountain, wood, rock. They're not looking to modernize the space. They're not looking to go more traditionally Catholic. They love what they have and they want to expand on that. Those beautiful blue lamb beams, for those of you who've been in the space, things like that are going to be kept intact. We can now see in the elevations, the existing grade at the church is in this general line, and we would be regrading to allow for better head height in the lower floors and then align the upper floor with the existing worship areas. The materiality would remain in the aesthetics of McCall with wood siding, metal roofing, rock, muted colors, traditional colors, things like that. And we would be also reintegrating the existing Jerusalem cross and bell that are on the facility currently. One of the biggest things with a project like this is also being the consideration of meeting the parking requirements for the increase in congregation size to the near 400. The level change, we would be adding retainage on site. There's also a thought process of adding more viable residence for father. That's an option that we're looking at, and of course will be needed through the approvals. Staff entry and day-to-day entry will be through the upper level, whereas congregation and larger events would enter through the lower level and come up the grand staircase or use the elevator. But exiting is viable on upper and lower. And then we've considered locations for snow holding. We are going to speak with our civil engineer post these meetings to better refine that and meet the city standards. Materiality considerations, as discussed, are it's a little bold in this design here, but what we are thinking is a new penny copper roof, something that has a little bit of materiality to it, but not garish, so that there's a little shine on the roof there, while bringing in the earth tones, muted colors, stonework, things like that. You can see here the existing A-frame of the existing facility, as well as here, and then the expansion from there to accommodate the new use. And then what I have down here is a couple perspectives for a little better feel of what's happening in the space. The retaining wall and the retainage would be more refined. We want to incorporate stacked stone look to the retainage, keep as much of the environment intact as we can. And by the time you get to the western side of the site, although it slopes this way, it also slopes in this direction, and we get to a much more level location here. So the site levels out with the neighboring facilities, and the retainage will help level that. That's the general scope of the project, and I'm open to any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Are you gonna relocate the A-frame? Is it something that could be relocated to some?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe the father and the diocese are working on a process to potentially donate it to somebody. I honestly wish I had a spot for it myself. I think it's a great little building. It's just not suiting their needs any further.
You need to buy it.
Yeah, Commissioners, any other questions? It seems to be fit within the property and needed space.
You'll have to work on snow storage, but you mentioned that, so.
Yes, yeah. We also understand we're going to meet with the arborist and talk tree mitigation to parking ratio to snow mitigation. And in our future discussions, we might need to balance those three things to make everybody as happy as we can.
Okay, I would say, yeah, continue working with staff and we'll see you at a future meeting.
Thank you very much for the time. Very appreciated.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to design review 2510, short scenic route 2503, and record of survey 2505. It is a public hearing. Make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have Doug Wilkinson here on the phone. Oh.
Good afternoon or evening almost. Yes, my name is Doug Wilkinson. I'm with Hawk Construction on behalf of Dick and Susan Johnson. We submitted for design review, scenic route review, and record of survey. We are going to build, first off, we're part of Hawk Construction and we've been building for a little over 20 years in McCall. Lots of experience there. And this next project of ours is right off of Lick Creek Road and Forest Cove Road, right in between those two. So as Meredith pulls a lot up as well. Currently the two lots are right there. We submitted for record of survey to be able to move and relocate one of the lot lines, the middle lot line, as the clients want their house. We're going to plan to build their house right in the middle of those two lots. And so we are moving, we're going to shrink the bigger lot right there. This home is going to be just about an 1,800 square foot custom home residence. It's going to be a summer cabin for the clients. This property has been in their family for generations, and it's been one of their dreams for a very long time to build on it, and they have an opportunity to do so now. This neighborhood is close to the lake, and it has preserved the natural landscape around. A lot of the cabins there are I would say rustic, and they do a really good job of preserving the natural landscape around McCall. And so we went into this design with that in mind as well, to create this cabin as far as preserving the neighborhood environment and the natural landscape around the lake. This property itself is on a steep incline. So that presented somewhat of a challenge, especially for the driveway and access. We've had numerous conversations with the fire department, with Ryan Garber, discussing best possible access points, whether from Lick Creek Road or Forest Cove Road. And what we are presenting now is somewhat of the driveway design right there. The house location is where we propose right now, but the driveway is going to be a little different. Given the steep grade of the property, we'll be starting the driveway where it is starting off of Forest Cove Road and going farther left and leveling and increasing grade and leveling out where we can turn back towards the house. And then to lengthen the driveway to be able to climb at a decent grade, we are going to have the entrance of the cabin on the top side of that house. And the parking pad will be on top of the house right there. That'll give us the best possible way that we have found to have a lower grade and to be able to access the home with safety in mind. Right now, we shot the grade, and right now, with that design in mind, the grade is at a 16%. We understand that with the fire department, the requirement is 10%, but we have worked with Ryan Garber to go over all the requirements, and the location of the house on the lot, and it actually in the entirety of the lot, will be within 150 feet of Lick Creek Road. And so therefore, the fire department will be able to use Lick Creek Road as the fire access road and be able to reach every part of that house in case of a fire. So therefore, the road requirement of 10% is negated. And now it's just access road for the clients and their guests as well. We understand that with being close to the lake and the impact area as well, stormwater requirements may be in play. The driveway will be gravel, and so it'll be below the 5,000 square foot impermeable surface threshold, given the house surface area is just about 1,000 square feet. And then also the average grade of the property itself is below the 35% mark in order to receive inspections throughout the process. We have implemented a tree protection fence line, and that can be adjusted if needed, given the new driveway design. And we plan on having the arborist out to create a even more detailed site plan of all the trees that will be taken out and all the trees that will be staying, to give you guys a clear description of how the scenic route will look like. Overall, we're very excited for these homeowners to be able to build their dream cabin, and we're excited to do so. And yes, I am open for any questions if you have them.
I'm confused about you're moving a lot line. So now you have bigger parcel, more equal sized parcels,
More equal size,
but you're only gonna build on one.
correct?
It's the survey drawing. Makes you feel any better.
Yeah, I think that's what I was. So the house will be on parcel B and parcel A will be for some future use.
If the clients wish to do so, correct?
All right. Commissioners, any other questions for Doug before we go to staff report? Okay, thank you. All right, Meredith.
So as we reviewed, this is design review, scenic route, and record of survey. I don't know that you all have seen an omnibus including a record of survey in recent years, but this used to be a little bit more common. But the goal is that we know all of the things happening in a development package at the same time so that the codes are applicable at the time of the application and we have a full development plan and scope figured out. So they did include the record of survey for that lot line adjustment to move the lot line and create a more preferred building pad situation. They are very strangely arranged properties under that pretty tall lip of Lick Creek Road where it doesn't necessarily make sense to drive down a roller coaster if there's a historically traveled something to arrive at lower down. I won't necessarily call it a road because it's a bit more of a ATV road. But it works nonetheless. So as was stated, this home has a relatively small footprint, especially in comparison to the size of the resulting site. Setbacks, which I forgot to provide in the table for you, on the sides, the minimum setback would be about 20 feet based on more than a 200-foot width, but they've got 44 feet on one side, the west side, and almost 100 feet on the east side as their side setbacks. And then they've got approximately 40 feet from Lick Creek Road and 47 feet from the property line, but not Forest Cove Road because Forest Cove comes onto the property and it's not a right of way. So they're kind of pulling the driveway and pad off of Forest Cove as it exists. But the messing around with how those funky old state roads work is not a topic that I get involved with. But that's what the fire district is for. I believe the fire captain took a good long look at this property and has spoken with the applicant representative relating to accessing the property appropriately. So a plan in mind is good. This again, like I've been saying the last few times, we've seen things, especially in the old state subdivisions that don't have well-established roads to them. Let's just be wary of homeowners insurance going through the construction process and after, because we're seeing a lot of folks unable to get their permanent policy after the construction policy is over, just being so close to the wooded areas. Sometimes there's mitigating measures that can be taken, but oftentimes that's the loss of significant trees near the site. To communicate with insurance early and often until we have more guidance on what insurance is supposed to tell people to do about the landscape that we love so deeply in our heritage trees. But being able to be insured is very important. The tree protection plan provided is good. It might be helpful to find out if there's any significant trees within the proposed to be fenced area where orange fencing could be placed along the drip line so that no mini excavators go on a quest out on the site. And then on occasion, bringing in some bark to protect root structures can be helpful for those more tricky trees. But having Kurt out there to make those recommendations prior to issuing a permit tends to be excellent. Other than that, the comment that the fire district sent me in that same packet that I got while I was on vacation, I'll read through it really quick, but they do appear to have a plan. It includes the comment of Forest Cove Road is not to be used as a fire department access road unless the following would be met down on there. All access roads should be built to Valley County standards and have an unobstructed width not less than 20 feet inclusive of shoulders, and not have a grade greater than 10%. Dead-end access roads longer than 150 feet should have turnarounds that meet the requirements of the fire code. Since they have a design that does not exceed 150 feet and access can be achieved from Lick Creek Road, That's more trivia and information at this point. Let's see what else. Driveways from access roads need to be provided when the first story of a building is more than 150 feet away from a fire apparatus. So in this case, we would be seeing a fire truck staged up high on Lick Creek Road. And as long as it is able to span that distance, that should be okay. And then the property shall prepare a wildfire protection plan and add any fuels mitigation on the property. So if you wanted to include a condition of approval to just comply with the McCall Fire District requirements, that was not included in your staff report, since I didn't see this comment until this morning or yesterday afternoon. With that, I can stand for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Meredith before we go to Morgan?
Hello, commissioners. I had a longer review on this one just because the record of survey is also included in this application. On the record of survey, I just had a few items on there for the applicant to coordinate with the county on, just to get some feedback on some of those items. There's a strange jog in the right-of-way boundary along Lick Creek, and I just wanted to double check that the county doesn't have any requirements of right-of-way dedication. There's no storage easements. And then there's just my standard notes on the records of surveys of what needs to be labeled and how they need to be tied to our control point grid. Regarding the site plan and stormwater itself, if the property exceeds a slope steepness greater than 20%, or if the average slope exceeds 35%, a geotechnical report and an analysis report of site preparation and foundations is required by code, but that's a building permit requirement that's required at that time. I wanted some clarification on the driveway grades, just to make sure they conform to the 10% rule. Some of the topography provided puts the driveway around 31%. So just making sure that we're not creating something that's not conforming. Let's see, just updating the site plan to show where utilities are coming from to serve the site, and that I just need a standard stormwater report and narrative for this application because it is under 5,000 square feet, and how they're going to maintain a clean site and not have a lot of erosion problems during construction, and how it'll be restabilized. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Can you talk about the driveway grade a little bit more? You said your calculations came up to 31%.
Yeah, there's a spot on the plans that were provided, and looking at the topography and measuring between the distances on those points provided. Let's see, maybe I can find a page. Yeah. I think it might have been that one because it has the grades on there. There is a spot in there where there's a 10-foot difference, I believe. I can't remember. I didn't take a screenshot of this red line. But how some of those topography lines line up. I just want to verify that the driveway will be compliant, 10%. I think it was around that snow storage area where they get a little tighter. With the scale that was provided. Which can be done via engineering review. Yes. It would be talking. Yeah. Yeah, this one, and then coming around the bend.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the requirement of 10%, is that for the fire department or?
It's our driveway standards and the fire department did talk, like, they did contribute to that code requirement as well because they don't want super steep driveways in the wintertime because then it's hard to access those properties, almost impossible on some of them if they're too steep.
Yeah, we discussed that. And he said that we don't have to have a 10% requirement.
That's correct. And that driveway design that we have on there is real. It actually comes up and goes all the way to the far side of that property line and then switches back. It has a 20-foot flat area for the switchback. Then it climbs up the new design, you can't see, it climbs up behind the house. In order to give it more of a stretch, or which is behind the house, so it gives it more climb. And with all that in play, climb areas were 16%, right? Whereas like Forest Cove Road coming down is like 15%. So it's all stupid. It's all, so that design, that those lines you see on there, apologize, it's hard for you to work with something that's not correct. Those lines come all the way to the far left of that path, and then switch back and move all the way to the back side of the house.
It's gonna, the road will continue through what is labeled snow storage right now? And then cut back?
Yes, correct. The snow storage. That side.
And the parking pad will not be there, it will be behind the house? That's a new map.
And what's nice about that for them is that you see that on that left side, that L shape that follows the left side of the house and then comes in front of the house and it's larger. That is actually a deck that is covered. Over it, so they can actually see how it is right there. So when they're in that flat side behind the house, they can walk on that deck without any stairs. The stairs, and then they can come across the next.
And the 10% requirement can be adjudicated by the fire district and the city engineer through the engineering approval. There's a lot of room on this very large site to make it fit properly. But if you would like to see a properly engineered and designed driveway, you have power to request it.
Yeah, I think
Morgan.
Morgan has
Morgan needs things to do.
high skills there. Okay, any other questions for Morgan or staff before we open up public comment? All right, to the public hearing, so we open public comment. Is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? If you're on the phone, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Is there anybody here in the audience wishes to comment regarding this application? With that, I make a motion, we, for that, any other questions for staff or any commissioners before we close public hearing? All right, I make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Right?
Aye. All right. Any other questions or do we have some items to go through on your fun lists that we love so much?
Unless it. Wait up. Design review, we have our usual A through G. Starting with A, is the project in general conformance with the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Yes, it is based. It's within on plan guidelines.
B, does the project jeopardize the health, safety, or welfare of the public?
See any reason for it?
See any items that would be jeopardizing anybody?
C, does the project conform to the applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance as required by the design review chapter?
Yes, it conforms with.
Yeah, zoning, system, subdivision.
D, the project must have no substantial impact on adjacent properties or on the community at large.
Not appear to have any substantial impacts. One of the smaller homes we see.
Yeah.
E, if applicable, subdivision design review has been submitted.
Not,
F,
Does
projects
not-
on the shoreline.
does not apply. Not apply.
G, for projects on the scenic route, the project must preserve and enhance the scenic quality of the street or highway. This would be the Lick Creek Road. So
Sounds like it's gonna be below the road, so.
okay. What are our specific scenic route thoughts? Commission shall ascertain whether the proposed development, improvement, or use will block or disrupt the visibility of significant views or features.
Does not
I
block.
believe so.
anything. Nope. Doesn't block anything. May even open up something.
Okay. And then number 2. Is the proposed development compatible in terms of setback, bulk, height, design, finished materials, signing, and landscaping with its immediate surroundings and the desired visual quality of the scenic route?
Yes. Tallest house over there.
Yeah.
All right, and then in terms of record of survey procedure, I've received the things that we need in the application process, and then with the adjustments based on Morgan's engineering comments, there's confidence that it will meet all of the standards and digital datum requirements, et cetera. The dimensional standards are met, although the existence of whether Forest Cove is an actual street or not is always a question, but it's not a question that I desire to answer. So with that, over to you to have big thoughts.
All right, commissioners. Another one that seems pretty cut and dry. Engineering is going to take care of the driveway concerns. With any motion, we do need to include the fire department comments that was received. or however you wanted that, Meredith, on those. Other than that, seems pretty basic. And again, one of the smaller homes we typically would see. They're not trying to put a giant home on a small lot.
So is that a modification of conditions of approval or?
Yeah. And if you would like language, I would recommend prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall receive approval from the McCall Fire District.
I have to say the rest of it though.
Yes.
Move to approve DR 2510, SR 2503, and ROS 2505 with the staff recommended conditions of approval with the previously noted modification.
Beautiful.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? All right, motion carries and is approved. Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay. Moving on, here we go to the design review 2511 and shoreline 2508 for 2210 Payette Drive. This is a public hearing. I make a motion, we open the public hearing. Good. A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Do we have a Merlin Stark?
It's on.
Merlin, if you're there, if you're muted, you may need to hit *6. I'm not sure what phone number yours. Oh, there.
It says MS.
Oh, I see Merlin on it, but yeah, you are muted, Merlin. You may need to hit *6.
Ordered for a beverage into his house.
Oh, can you hear me now?
There he is. Now we can hear you.
All right, sorry about that. All right, my name is Merlin Stark. I'm an architect in Boise at 300 East 35th in Garden City. And I'm representing Fred and Francie Oliver at 2210 Payette Drive. And our application is to demolish an existing home that was built in the 70s and to construct a new residence on that site. The requirement of the owner was a pretty good sized house, and it was to be 5 bedrooms with views to the lake. And our challenge, which I think that we met pretty well, was to construct the house so that it had a minimal impact from the street, and then was able to maximize the views to the lake, which obviously this property wants. I think we did a good job of minimizing the height as well as utilizing natural materials on the house. We're using wood siding, wood glulam beams, natural stone, and a metal roof. The challenge also was to minimize the amount of snow that we would have within the motor court there. And so we've designed all the roofs to be low pitch shed roofs that would shed the snow to areas that wouldn't impact the house nor the neighbors. And also kind of one of the unique features that the owner wanted was access to the beach or to the shoreline that would be easy for them in their later years. So we located a lower basement that would have a door out at grade to the shoreline, but also then landscape that area to a natural aspect so that it was hidden basically from view. I worked pretty close with Meredith on this to make sure that our heights all worked out. I think our highest point is less than 35 feet on the lower side. And then as you step up the hill, the impact from the street, the view was probably about 18 feet from grade that you would see from the street. So we're trying to respect the neighbors as well, so that anybody who's around there isn't looking, at a structure that appears more than one story from the street view. I can't think of anything else right now, and I'd like to open it up for questions.
All right, thank you, Merlin. Commissioners, any questions for Merlin?
I don't see the 50-foot shoreline line anywhere in.
It is on the grading plan, and we are back from it.
There was one of them I saw something.
I think it might be also be on it's on the site plan as well, but I think all of our roof eaves are back from the 50-foot line.
I think it's in that one somewhere.
Yeah.
Man.
It's just, there we go.
Sorry.
Right, yeah.
So on that side note, grading of backyard area, you expect to be moving a lot of dirt back there?
We are going to have to move some dirt just to get that lower basement in, but then we're going to regrade it to as natural as we can. The only thing we're adding is that stairway that goes down to a 47 or 47.5 inch, whatever your requirement was, of that path that leads back up to that vault below. So we will have some grading there, but we are going to be retaining it all with natural boulders and no poured concrete as far as the retaining on the backside.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, Merlin. I'm going to go to staff report.
So as reviewed, this is effectively a new construction of a large lakeside home. It is located there off of Payette Drive, which is on the
West side of the lake.
west side of the lake, east facing shore. So I'm getting into brain fart mode. As Mr. Stark stated, we did work through a couple iterations, especially relating to building height, as well as general structure size for a minute. And then we had some good revisions occur to reduce the amount of grading and cut and fill that was going on. There's still going to be a great amount of doing that, as we've seen on these lakefront homes, especially in the last 5 or so years. We're below the building height measurement, which in this case would be taken from the more restrictive of either existing grade prior to construction or finished floor. So the more restrictive in this case is finished floor cutting deeper. And you do see that deepest cut happening at the location of that roll-up door that is not allowed to be a boat garage and is exclusively for pedestrian access on that lake side. So there will definitely be some dirt moving, earth moving going on, and disturbance that should be monitored within the stormwater plan that I believe was submitted to the city engineer. There is quite a bit of glass in the design facing the lake to take advantage of the views of the lake. But there is the use of mitigating natural materials, stone facing, etc. Within the design. The roof being metal is probably a good thing for the continual fire insurance point that I like to bring up, where if you have a metal roof, you're more likely to be insurable someday. But then other than that, it meets the 50-foot setback. The design of those steps to get down from the existing grade to that path will need to follow the terms of how high each different retaining wall can be in practice. So there might have to be some significant steps and then runs to get down to it. But that can be managed in the approach to building permit process, in my opinion. Leaving the rest closer to natural grade is definitely preferred. But I think it's important that we acknowledge that folks of all ages and movability types should be able to access the natural resources that we have available. Other than that, I can plop up some of the exterior finish examples. So kind of consistent with the whatever version of Mountain Modern that we're seeing in recent years, with some gray tones and occasional exposed beams. And other than that, I can stand for any questions. It's pretty close on lot coverage. It doesn't push the side setbacks all the way. It's about 1 foot short of pushing the side setbacks to their maximum extent. It's got a greater front setback than required. And then it is within about 0.2% of its lot coverage limitation. So don't build it too big on accident or we're gonna have a problem.
I will not.
Thank you.
So that lakeside elevation shows that garage door, but then everything else is mounded up on either side of it.
Mhm.
But on the landscape plan, it seemed like there was a lot of pathways, lower patios.
Not patios, mostly just natural vegetation just to retain the site.
Page 214 there. I just want to make sure we're on the same. Yeah, so lower patio, path looks like stone bordered pathways, another access down to the beach.
I think there'll be unsurfaced terraces, which are
Correct.
not really officially much of anything. Labeling of patio is not helpful to the,
No, and I guess when I look at the elevation, it just shows a big mound. I'm
Yeah.
curious how all that's gonna work.
yeah.
All right, any other questions for Meredith? All right, we'll go to engineering.
Hello, commissioners. I don't have as long of a review for this application. We did mention the Boulder Jetty into Payette Lake, and Merlin did say they were removing that work from the scope of work and an email that he sent to me. So that's not a comment anymore. I have a similar comment on this application regarding the slopes and a geotechnical report at building permit. And then the note that any retaining walls over 4 feet in height require an engineer to design and stamp them. Let's see, on the stormwater side, just clarifying if the driveway is being paved or not. If it is paved, usually we have like a sand and grease or oil and grease separator to help clean some of the runoff before it goes into the lake. So that was just an extra comment in there. And then I had some red lines of the stormwater drainage report that was attached. And then just where the temporary BMPs for construction will be located. And then all of these will need to be addressed for final engineering approval. Let me know if you have any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Morgan? All right, this is a public hearing, so we'll go open up for public comment. Is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? If you're on the phone and muted, you need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, there is nobody here in the audience, so don't have any comments there. Again, online or on the phone, comment? Right, with that, we will close the public comment. Commissioners, any questions? Dave, did you want to have a question to Merlin about that patio area? Any clarification there?
Well, I guess, is it or isn't it, Merlin?
It's not a patio. That one note, I'm sure was probably pointing toward the patio that you can see, you know, at grade, but all of that slope is not going to have any patios on it. It's basically just going to be landscaped, and the retaining walls there in rock were just basically to hold grade back from that dock access path. And also, I just wanted to tell you too that we've also eliminated the roll-up door, and we're just doing a sliding door that goes out of that area on the lower level. So there will never be any kind of like boat storage in that area down below. It's just going to be for just like beach equipment and things like that.
Yeah, it took me a minute to catch it, but the lower patio site right there is pointing to the left.
Correct.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions before we close the public hearing? Any questions for staff or the applicant?
And there's no lot coverage left if they decided to put pavers down. So I would show
No,
up
we're-
bullhorn and rip them out.
no, there will be no pavers down there. The only thing that we'll have are those steps, and there'll be natural stone going down to that lower dock access.
All right. With that, any other questions? I would make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? All right. Now with that, Meredith, we have our checklist items.
So for design review and shoreline review, we're getting into a routine. We have our design review criteria, which are as follows. Does the project conform in general with the comprehensive plan, and why?
Yes, it conforms with the plan. Everything fits within its guidelines.
B, the project must not jeopardize the health, safety, or welfare of the public.
Could not.
I don't believe there's any items that would jeopardize safety or health.
D, the project shall have no substantial impact on adjacent properties or on the community at large.
Does not appear to have any potential impacts, especially considering there's nobody in the audience or anywhere that had any concerns with any of the neighbors.
Okay, D, the project, wait, did I do that one already? E, if
Right, you skipped C and went to D. You need to go back to C.
okay, back to C. The project must conform to the applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance as enumerated in the design review chapter of this code.
It conforms with the ordinances and sections of the code.
Okay. E, if applicable, subdivision design review.
Not applicable.
Okay, F, For projects in the shoreline and river environment zone, the project must not have an unreasonable or adverse impact on the visual quality of its setting or on the water quality.
Since there's already a house there and they're replacing it with another house, I don't think it will significantly impact the visual quality.
And G for projects on the scenic route.
Ooh,
I take boo to mean not applicable.
Q.
Okay. And then our shoreline standards are the development should not dominate the vistas of water to the extent that it has an unreasonable adverse impact on the visual quality of its setting.
Don't believe it's having that. They're trying to keep it much as they can lower profile, I guess, from the one side.
B, development should be compatible in form, line, color, and texture with its surroundings.
Seems to blend in well with the colors.
Given the scale of it.
Yeah.
The development should not significantly differ in scale or contrast to its surroundings to the extent that it has an unreasonable adverse impact on the visual quality of its setting.
I think it's pretty consistent with what else we see on the lake. So I do not anticipate it having an unreasonable adverse impact.
Okay, and D, structures should be clustered to allow for visibility through the site of the lake or river and avoid a wall of structures as viewed from the water.
There's only one structure.
This is the only one that I'm struggling with. I think they did a really good job blending into the rest of the parcel, but that's a wall of windows from the lake. Somewhat broken up by natural features, but I don't know if there's any remedial.
Trees.
In 15 years. That's really my only,
Yeah, I mean, I
but
think some will blend in.
one
with the
side out of
trees.
4, I guess, is a win.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one?
I think with some of the natural landscape, it'll help minimize that with the more windows.
Criteria are related to prohibitions of harm and any necessary permitting for work within the shoreline 50-foot setback area, which is again generally covered by engineering review and final approval. Unless you have any questions about the technical parts. Back to you.
All right, got through that, those items. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns, commissioners, or I'm open to motion.
I move to approve design review 2511 and shoreline 2508 with the staff recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries and is approved. Right, thank you, Marvin.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your help.
Thank you. All right. I don't believe we have any signs.
Nope. No
God,
signs.
It's like 3 months with no signs. Are you sure they're not sneaking it in?
I'm sure they are.
I'm sure they are. And skis too.
We have a new art project.
Yes.
Yes.
So your update on the skis is that that's headed right back for the code enforcement journey that it has already been on. So the letter is being drafted to be sent. Again, the design guidelines are slated to be touched during the comprehensive plan update, which is currently budgeted and planned for the 2026 fiscal year. And that is the time and space for the downtown area to express its desires for what our new visual dream may be.
All right, so
Code enforcement is just escalating fines or like loss of business license? How far does that go?
It depends on the thoughts of the recipient at the time it is received. So there's a civil route, there's a criminal route, there's all kinds of options.
all right. Is there anything new with the impact zone in the county?
The public hearing process has begun its start towards scheduling. So July 7th will be the public hearing on the actual submission by the city at the Valley County Board of Commission meeting. I believe it's sometime like midday down there. So staff and legal will at some point present the same information that really contributed to the preferred map by the city council. And go over the evidence wished to contribute to that presentation, be it master plans over the last 50 years, be it any factual information relating to what we do within the impact area in hopes that it can remain in the form that it successfully has been functioning in.
Is that a public hearing?
It's a public hearing, and then I believe there, Billy can jump in and tell me if there's like another public hearing that they have to do. But I believe they even have a date set for when they want to be writing and adopting their decision document. So that should all be done by early to mid-August, and we'll know how much work we get to keep doing or not.
All right. Any other items? I can see notation on just the next month's meeting doesn't look too much at this point. I guess we move one item over.
It should be manageable. Yep. And I'll probably have like at least 100 pages of findings for you, like the rest of all of the May findings and one that I lost track of from March. But that should be okay. Folks still have a lot of conditions of approval to be working on in the meantime.
All right, any other items or? Then, yeah, I make a motion, we adjourn at 7:03.
Second?
We motion and second to adjourn, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Yeah.